One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Mr. Menendez, did you spend a lot of money before your parents died?
Yes.
Did you spend significantly more money after your parents died?
Yes.
And did you buy 3 Rolex watches
Yes.
and a Porsche?
Yes.
Did you spend a lot of money on clothes?
Yes.
Your parents were in the process of buying you a condominium at the time they died, is that correct?
Right.
Did you make an offer on another condominium that was right nearby?
Yes.
And why were you going to buy? Did you actually make offers on 2 other condominiums?
Yes.
And why were you going to buy those 2 other condominiums?
Well, actually, the one was a condominium, and one was like a much larger place, like
Okay.
more like a patio home.
Okay.
And
What was your thought when you made the offer on the condominium?
well, I was going to go to Princeton, and the condominium that my parents bought was for that purpose, and we were really trying hard to get my brother into Princeton for that fall semester, and my Aunt Marta was arranging things, and everybody was trying to meet with the Princeton people, and I met
Who was
with...
that condominium going to be for?
That was for Erik.
And when you decided to make the offer on the patio home, who was going to live in that patio home?
Well, that was... I wasn't sure if Erik was going to be able to get in, and it turned out that they wouldn't let him in for that semester. And in the event that he didn't get in, I wanted to make an offer on this patio home, because then he was going to maybe play tennis then at that point and travel, and I wanted a place big enough for, I was going to be living in Princeton, and big enough for he and his coach, when they came into town, that they could stay in the house with me rather than have these, maintain a separate condominium when he would be just flying in every once in a while.
Did you ever end up buying either one of those?
No.
And the one that did close was the one that your parents were in the process of buying when they died, is that correct?
Right, I finished the sale of that one.
And did you also borrow money from the estate to buy a restaurant?
Yes.
And when was that?
The restaurant was purchased at the end of January.
Why did you buy that? Or why did you invest in that?
Basically, I was just very unsure as to what was going on in my life at that point, whether I wanted to go back to school, since I wasn't able to start the first semester, whether I wanted to come in midterm, or whether I was going to go on the tour and play with Erik, and there was expectations of that, and I was sort of all over the place. And in talking with my uncles, basically this feeling that I should do something and focus on something, and I picked that.
Do you today have any of the watches?
No.
Do you have the Porsche?
No.
Do you own any condos?
No.
What happened to the restaurant?
Just gave it back to the person I bought it for.
After your parents died, you hired bodyguards.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Right.
Where was it that you first saw bodyguards after your parents died?
First saw bodyguards, the company hired them to guard the Beverly Hills house.
What did you think about that?
That they had, that they knew about my dad's connections, or had more details as to my dad's connections, and had some concern that somebody might want to go back to the house to get something. So they were protecting the house pretty vigorously. I mean, the guards were armed and so on.
And did you hire bodyguards after that, after seeing the guards at the house, or before?
No, once I saw the series of things, once I saw the guards at the house and from watching TV programs, I got nervous and just decided to hire some guards.
What about the TV programs that you watched made you nervous?
Well, there was just program after program about my dad's having mafia connections, and that why this could be a mafia hit. And, you know, I remember seeing it could have been a hard copy or one of those shows about this mafia family and where my dad might have fit in, and the different things I knew about his business deals in the past that were shady, and just programs like that. And it just made me nervous. And then there was a release from the police, although detectives always said it was actually the coroner. But it seemed like the police releasing that it was a mob hit, and seemed like that's where the investigation would go.
But you knew the mafia hadn't killed your parents.
Right.
Right? So why did it frighten you that there was all this coverage about it being a mob hit?
Because nobody else knew that it wasn't the mafia, and my concern was that whatever my dad's connections were, and I really didn't have as many details as people might have thought, that I was going to be helping the police and was furthering the investigation and giving up information. And I just felt that if my dad was doing something real illegal, or if he had some connection that was concerned about being exposed, they might think the sons were just giving it all up to find out who killed their parents. And I didn't want to give that impression, and you know, I didn't want anything to happen to Erik and I because of that reason. So I hired the guards, at least in New Jersey.
How long did you have them?
About 2 weeks or so, just for a short period of time, to see if anything would happen.
Did you, during that period of time, believe that you were followed ever?
We were being followed.
How do you know you were being followed?
Because the limo, the bodyguard driver, told me that we were being followed. And
did you believe him?
yes. And then I believe one of the main bodyguards checked up on it and said it may be the FBI following me. He had a friend in the FBI, and that it might be the FBI.
Could you think of any reason why the FBI would be following you?
No. I don't think he believed that too much either.
At some point, did you ask Glenn Stevens to help you out with regard to contacting the mafia?
Yes.
Why did you ask Glenn Stevens to help you in that regard?
Because his family actually had mafia connections, and
How did you know that?
because he bragged about it, and he actually did. They did actually have mafia connections.
How do you know that?
Because we went up and met with one of the people who was supposedly in the mob and ran the security company in New York. Certainly looked like he was in the mob, and
Let me stop you. Did you talk to Glenn Stevens about your concerns about the mafia?
yes,
And did he offer to set up a meeting for you?
yes,
And did he tell you something about who you would be meeting with?
yes.
And what did he tell you about the person you would be meeting with?
That he was a member of a crime family in New York, and that he would be a good person if I had concerns to talk to, since his father knew him very well.
And did you meet with this person?
Yes,
Do you remember his name?
yes.
What's his name?
His name was Tony Negri.
And where did this meeting take place?
At Anthony Negri's office in New York. And then we went out to a restaurant.
And did you tell him of your concerns?
Yes, I met with Glenn, and I went up there. I believe it was just Glenn and I. And at some point I asked to speak with him privately so I could discuss this with him, and I told him my concern and that my brother and I were not interested in finding out who had killed my parents, and if he could maybe get the word out that we weren't helping in any police investigations, and if anybody was still nervous about that, whatever my dad was involved in, that we didn't want to know, and we had no concern for that. And
Did you tell him you had killed your parents?
no.
When you asked him to get the word out, I mean, did he tell you he would, or tell you he couldn't, or what did he tell you?
He told me that he would.
Did you feel better after that?
I felt better, and then we met again, and he told me that I had nothing to worry about.
Mr. Menendez, I believe you'd indicated that the first girlfriend you had was a young woman named Stacy Feldman, is that correct?
Right.
And after you broke up with Stacy, the next girlfriend you had was Jamie Pisarcik, is that correct?
Right.
And when did you start going with Ms. Pisarcik?
At the end of the fall of '86.
And was she your girlfriend on and off for a period of time?
Yes.
And did you break up with her, or did she break up with you, rather, in February of 1989, the spring of '89?
In February of 1989.
89.
She broke up with me in February of '89, and then, okay.
And did you resume the relationship shortly after your parents died?
Yes.
In fact, did she attend the memorial service in New Jersey?
Yes.
And was she your girlfriend at the time you were arrested?
No.
Did you resume the relationship with her after you were arrested?
It took a little while, but basically we became boyfriend and girlfriend again.
So while you were in jail, was she visiting you?
She visited me immediately, like the day after I got arrested.
And was she coming to visit you regularly?
Yes.
How often was she coming to visit you?
Probably about 4 times a week or more. I mean, pretty often.
And what is entailed in someone coming to visit you at the jail? Is that just easy? You make an appointment and you walk in, or is it difficult?
No, it's very difficult. And it's pretty oppressive, I think. So it's not an enjoyable experience for the most part. I mean, hopefully the visit is, but going and leaving is difficult.
And was she coming to court appearances for you? Was she coming to court when you went to court?
She was coming to court appearances, the ones she could. I mean, sometimes she was working.
Did she at some point begin to ask you about whether you had in fact killed your parents?
She never asked me until many months after I was arrested. She started to wonder, and she wanted to know, and then she started to really press me that she needed to know.
And did you decide to tell her?
Yes.
Was this in the fall of '90?
Yes.
Do you remember the exact date?
Not the exact date, but I believe it was in the fall.
And how is it that you told her?
I decided to write out, what had happened, and just essentially what had happened and why and some of the issues.
Why did you decide to tell her?
Because I didn't think it was fair with her coming down to the jail continually, and you know, she had never asked me why, and this was obviously a very difficult thing to talk to her about, and I just felt like our relationship in the jail was getting to a point where it would be the right thing to do, and I was feeling very guilty, and she was pressing me to know, and yeah, I could have said, my attorneys have said not to talk to anybody, which they had, but with her being my girlfriend, I felt I should anyway.
So you said you wrote a letter?
Yes.
A long letter or a short letter or what?
Several pages, pretty long.
And in that letter, did you tell her that you had killed your parents?
Yes.
And in that letter, did you explain what had happened?
Yes.
And did you explain to her information about your background with your parents?
Yes.
Did you tell her that Erik had been molested by your father?
Yes.
Did you tell her that you had been molested by your mother?
Yes.
Did you tell her that you'd been molested by your father?
No.
Why?
I just couldn't tell her that.
Why?
I was just something I could talk to her about my mom, but there were lots of reasons, but mostly because I was just ashamed, and I hadn't really decided. In fact, I had sort of in my own mind.
Let me go back. Why were you ashamed?
I don't know why. I just felt like that was not something. I mean, I knew that Erik had talked to people about it, but I wasn't going to say what happened to me. And
Why not?
I just... I don't know, it wasn't really, I mean, it was embarrassing, but it was really more than that. I just didn't want to say that my dad did those things. I didn't want to say the things he did to me. And
Why? Why didn't you want to say what your dad had done to you?
Because I was ashamed.
Were you concerned about your father?
I just didn't think that I could go through that. One problem was I felt, see, this was Jamie. I mean, there were two problems. One was Jamie herself being my girlfriend, and I really felt concerned that she would feel differently about me, and it would affect our relationship if I revealed this to her. And, you know, talking about what happened with my mother was just not the same. I didn't think she would see it the same. And, but really, at that point in time, there was a whole other issue of whether I would talk about this to anybody. And if I was asked to here, and I never wanted to have to do what I did here. And, it's been very depressing to have to do that, and I've felt drained since I've done it, and I felt like I betrayed my dad to some extent. There were a lot of things going on in my mind. I had a good relationship with my grandmother, and I didn't want her to hear those things from me.
Your grandmother, you mean your father's mother?
Right.
You said you felt like you betrayed your father. Why is it a betrayal of your father?
It just feels that way. I don't know why.
Do you want people to think well of your father?
I would have liked that.
Why, after all he did to you, do you want people to think well of your father?
I just missed the connection I had with him, and I loved him, and I felt, I guess, very guilty. And seeing my grandmother and people hurt.
Do you feel like you've betrayed him now by the things you've told about him here in court?
I have.
How
I
do you
have
feel?
betrayed him.
How do you feel about having betrayed him?
Just depressed. And wishing that I don't know, sorry.
So in the letter, you didn't tell her about your father, is that right?
No.
Did you tell her about the fear?
Yes.
What did she say about the fear and the fight before? Did you tell her about that?
Yes, I wrote everything.
What did she say about that?
What did who say about it?
What did Jamie say about the fear and the fight?
Well, we didn't get that far.
What do you
Because
mean?
as soon as she read, at some point, she just got very angry. Basically about what I was saying happened to my brother. She didn't believe it. She didn't, I don't know if she was angry about just hearing that I was involved, and she was, you know, I was crying and she was very upset and I believe crying, and you know, she was sad, but she was angry. She didn't want to believe that. She didn't want to believe those things. She hadn't seen it herself, she said, and we basically, she didn't want to read anymore.
Did you have another conversation with her?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to play the tape at this point in time.
Previous to, or prior to him telling me that, holding the letter up, I guess he was kind of, you know, working on his own defense type thing. And he had asked me to watch a movie called At Close Range. And that is what in that movie there was a scene where that is what they wanted me to say. He and his lawyer, which was Joel at the time. This is what Lyle was saying. I've never spoken to Joel. You talking about Joel? Joel. Had wanted me to say happened to me.
Well, what happened to At Close Range?
I had seen the movie before. I did not go home and watch it. I had not seen it. But in that movie, the father, I guess, makes happens, or I don't believe he rapes. The one character would want Sean Penn's girlfriend. He had asked me to say that that's what had happened. And
Lyle